Okay, so we've had, again, a very full afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started with our legislative panel. On our panel, we have Lieutenant Colonel Maureen Fromuth, professional staff member at the Senate Committee on Armed Forces, Air Force Reserve Officer, and former U.S. Cybercom Legislative Affairs Chief of Staff. We also have Joshua Stiefel, former professional staff member at the House Committee on Armed Services and U.S. Navy Reserve Intelligence Officer. And we also have Mr. Brandon Pugh, Principal Cyber Advisor of the Department of the Army. Thank you.
All right, well, good afternoon. Really thrilled to be here. I know many of you in the audience, but as you heard, I'm the new Army Principal Cyber Advisor. I've been in the job for, we were just talking about, it's easy to get lost in track of time at the Pentagon, 9 days or so. But this panel is not about me, but I have to say it's a super exciting time being an Army guy myself at the time where our Secretary is leading the Army Transformation Initiative. If you haven't followed ATI, worth the read. Bottom line is cyber is a key priority for the leadership of the Army. So super exciting. And we'd love to engage with you. So we have an incredible team, half of which our office is actually here today, so be sure to see them. But this is not about me, it's about these two excellent people next to me. We're really fortunate to have them. But as you'll hear when they introduce themselves, both have military backgrounds, both have experience on the Hill for many years, so we're very fortunate to have them. So if you don't mind, maybe we'll just have you both introduce yourselves, and at the same time, maybe explain, like, what is a PSM, what does your day-to-day look like, and what is the jurisdiction of your committee? I know that's a lot in an intro, but whoever would like to start us off.
So Josh Stiefel here, formerly of the House Armed Services Committee, where I served on 2 different majority staffs from January 2019 to about 8 days ago. And started my career in the IC as an intel analyst, doing classic sort of state-on-state geopolitics, and got to do a lot of fun things, really enjoyed my time. Deployed downrange, worked in the National Military Command Center, did 2 tours in OSD policy, and went off to grad school, started pivoting from state-on-state to cyber, and was very fortunate to find a desk and a place to sit in OSD cyber policy, working for that man, Major General John Davis. That was my first boss in cyber in 2014, and continued on ever since. So spent 3 years at the Treasury before coming to the committee in 2019.
And I have to say, sorry to interrupt you, I don't know if it's a coincidence that you left the day I started, or I mean, it's suspicious timing, but no, in reality, we've known each other for a long time. So
Trying to
Marty.
tell you something.
That's what I think, Marty.
So yeah, I'm similar to Josh. I actually started my career in the intelligence community. I still am technically Air Force intel officer in the reserves. Surprisingly enough, as a young officer, apart from the fact that I really enjoyed analytics and fell into the whole thing, I found my way down to NSA Georgia, and that was where my first sort of foray into cyber really started. We were helping stand up CMT 105, and it was really at the onset and sort of the initial development and understanding and organizational structure of the CMF, what would eventually become the CMF. And then I took a couple unique spins and turns, namely up in OSD Cape. Yes, please don't throw spears at me if you know what that organization is. We're not always the most well-liked across the department. But I got bit by the artificial intelligence bug while I was there, and then I spent on and off in industry at Amazon Web Services and Google, and then eventually got my master's in data analytics, data science, so artificial intelligence nerd. But through all of that, I realized, one of the unique things I think in the cyber portfolio and advanced technology portfolio is it is changing so rapidly that from a policy and a legislative perspective, that relationship with the Hill is far more important, I think, than anywhere else. I saw that when I was working with the intelligence community and helping them adopt artificial intelligence. They were constantly on the Hill, whether it was figuring out how to get these programs into programs of records or these innovative sort of things, or it was figuring out the appropriate use of technology. So I was a fellow in the Air Force as a result on the Hill, and then got the pleasure of coming back full time.
That's awesome. Thank you both. I'm curious, maybe if you can just elaborate, like when we hear Armed Services Committee, what does that actually mean? Like, I like to think it's all about cyber, but in reality, we know it's a lot more. So, so if you don't mind, maybe just kicking us off on that.
Sure. So most folks are not necessarily aware of this, but if you are, good on you. I certainly wasn't. There's two different types of staff across both the House and the Senate. One is the staff for the personal offices, tend to have a little bit more breadth, much larger portfolios. But then there's the staff that's specifically assigned to each one of the different committees. And those staff members are typically called or known PSMs, professional service members. Professional staff members. Excuse me, I started 3 months ago, so clearly. But we have the luxury of focusing in particularly on a particular domain or jurisdiction across the chamber. So for us, yes, it's everything from F-35s to cyber to a myriad of different armed services things. But what's very interesting in the cyber domain is the internet goes across defense, commerce, homeland defense, all of these intelligence, and so we in the cyber portfolio on the Armed Services Committee work a lot and have to work a lot across the other committees as well.
So when Marty says the we, let's be clear, the cyber PSM team is one person deep, right? It's one person in the majority, one person in the minority who's also covering 4 other portfolios, right? One person on the Senate side majority, one person on the Senate side minority. So you're talking about one person per side, per corner, dealing with a $25 billion portfolio, right? It's almost as if legislative oversight is designed not to succeed, because one person having oversight over $25 billion, which is one of the smaller portfolios on the committee, right? It's impossibly hard. And so it really speaks to how do you think about your job? How do you think about, where you spend your time? Because you're not going to cover everything. How do you draw a distinction between a problem and the symptom of an underlying problem? Sometimes you think you're seeing a problem, but really it is a symptom of something that sits behind it and is sort of harder to discern.
No, that's helpful. So before we get into kind of where we stand now with an NDAA and maybe future-looking priorities, but maybe look back historically. And you were on the Hill for a long time, and you've been there now for 3 months. Are there certain milestones like you're super proud of, or that are helpful to reflect on?
That's all you.
I gave you a long list, so this is good.
Only 6.
I knew there was going to come a time where that paper would come.
One of the first things is the Cyber Operations Peculiar Awards. The idea that our service members are probably not going to get rewarded with chest candy for the things that they do in cyberspace. So how can we demonstrate that they're valued, that they have relevance and create value for the organizations that typically don't see cyber as sort of a core functionality? So that was in the FY23 NDAA. Unfortunately, only 4 have been issued to date in the 3 years since it's been in existence. So hopefully something an Army PCA can take on and accelerate.
I'm taking notes here, so.
The forced establishment in the Navy of a cyber career field for officers and enlisted, which resulted in the maritime cyber warfare officers and the cyber warfare technicians, something that didn't exist and was not helping the Navy in building cyber capability. The Academic Engagement Office for cyber activities to actually bring the kind of birdshot approach to funding cyber scholarships across the department, where it's just proliferating programs instead of saying, like, hold on, let's see where we're spending it, like how to do this the right way, correct investment in programs that weren't working, double down on programs that were working. Occupational resiliency of the cyber mission force. Thank God for HammerCon, because were it not for this place, it would not be an issue that would have ever come on my radar. Elevation of JFHQ Doden to the DoD Cyber Defense Command. That happened in the last NDAA, pretty proud of that one. And then the sort of future look by the National Academies of cyber force as a concept to compare to the current and aspirational model that the Cyber Command leadership has been talking about for a while. Very proud of all those.
No pressure. Anything?
I can't take credit for any of these, unlike Josh, so I cannot come with as he always does, comes very prepared. I think for me, two of the biggest things that I've noticed, particularly in the maturity of the command and the force writ large, I think enhanced budget control, and I can say this having, lived through the blood, sweat, and tears of working with the J8 and J9 and actually delivering the first budget to Congress as I sat on the other side in legislative affairs. It is a truly momentous time in which the command can absorb and take on ownership and control of its own budget. Are there flaws? Are there still things that we need to work out? Absolutely. But building that muscle memory and then as a result as well getting the acquisition authorities to go along with that are absolutely critical. I will also say that, again, while not perfect and still a lot of work to do, the artificial intelligence roadmap was also pretty momentous. I think oftentimes those that are leading the pack also get the most amount of spears. And why I say this is the command is, and the cyber force writ large, the cyber mission force writ large, and all of the services supporting it are really honestly one of the only COCOMs that has an AI roadmap. I think that's incredible. I know under previous commanders there was this vision of having the command and the cyber mission force being sort of that bleeding edge of technology. Again, lots of room to grow, but it's things like that, things like leading that artificial intelligence strategy roadmap, having that on the metaphorical and literal map is really, really, really important. And I think it pushed the command, it pushed cyber operations in the right direction.
Perfect. Yeah, I should have said at the start, there will be an opportunity for questions and answers. So if you have any questions, feel free to jot them down. We'll leave at least 5 minutes at the end for those. Really force modernization, force, structure across the military is a priority, but I would say especially in cyber. So I'm curious to hear both of your thoughts and what should we be thinking about? What could come down the pike? Just what that landscape looks like.
So think of us as one of our former colleagues used to talk about Congress is the board of directors, right? You are there to oversee. You're part of the company, but you're not really part of the company, and you're sort of there to give this kind of impartial look and sort of this unbiased view of are we headed in the right direction? Are we moving forward without the emotionality that sometimes comes from sitting in these roles? And where we're heading, and the issue on cyber is I don't have to tell the CNO to care about maritime warfare. I'm pretty sure the CNO cares about that and thinks about that 24 hours a day. I don't have to tell the Chief of Staff of the Air Force to care about air warfare, right? I do have to tell every service chief to care about cyber warfare. That is a problem. That absence of responsibility, that absence of ownership. It's everyone's problem, but when it's everyone's problem, it's really no one's problem. And so when the PSMs are thinking about it, it's really sort of forcing a change in what we would otherwise think they would want to be, enthusiastically jumping into. And that's just something that our other colleagues don't have to deal with. That's why being a PSM on the cyber side is truly unique. The Navy's been doing maritime warfare for a very long time. There's reason to course correct, right? But it's not about telling them to care. It's very different in this respect. So it's a unique different kind of role where you just get to step back and say, does this make sense? Hey, we've been doing this a long time. Why are we not further along than where we are today?
Yeah, so I will first caveat that I should have said this at the very beginning. These are the thoughts of myself and do not reflect the fun moniker. But I think me coming into this with a little bit of fresh eyes, Josh has much more tenure on this topic and this portfolio than I do. I think one of the reasons why he and I still approach things very similarly, though, is because we are, I think, analysts at the trade, right? We want to go and decompose a problem, understand a problem, ask questions, get to the root cause, but we also look and identify trends, right? So where Josh is at and what he's been able to see has been, hey, why are we not further along in this trend than I expect based upon the things that I've been doing? I'm starting that journey. And so I'm still building up and asking those questions and trying to understand the root causes. And that's why, quite frankly, and we're probably going to get to this eventually, that's why it's really helpful when we come and engage with either environments like this with HammerCon, or even come through staffer days or whatever it is, to have honest and truthful conversations, because it helps us understand and build and mature our paradigm. One of the things that I've been really excited and interested in is some of the maturity that I've been seeing, or some of the adjustment, or the movements that I've been seeing in this sort of like expeditionary cyber kind of world. I don't know what that means yet, but this idea of service kind of aligned cyber, right? Whether it sees there's some other examples where there's some things that fall below the threshold, if you will, of geographic combatant commands that may be something that a service wants to take on through the delegated authorities of. I'm really fascinated by that. I think that's an interesting kind of shift in maturity. We saw it with ISR. I don't know, maybe it's just something right now, but it's something I'm definitely kind of keeping my eyes on. And then the other component, and I think you probably can appreciate why I'm going to say this, given the folks that are sitting on this panel and many out in the audience, is how are we using our Guard and Reserve? What does that actually look like? How do we better integrate them? How do we keep our force as they transition through and into various other portions of their career? I've been in industry. I love it. I also love coming back. How do we maintain that skill set and those groups of folks writ large, so we can continue to mature and not lose the people that have obviously dedicated a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, time away from family, and building and honing their skills.
So just following up on what Marty said about the Guard and Reserve, right? I can't count the number of times, occasions, and events I've been to over 10 plus years where we talked about, we got to really think about how we leverage the Guard and Reserve. You have folks in Congress saying it, you have leadership in the department saying it, and somehow it still has not gotten better. Like, what are the structural impediments? Why is it that 13 acts of Congress have passed on this issue in 12 years, and it's not any better? Like, these are the sorts of trends that we need to kind of have that historical appreciation for and say, what's not right about this, that everyone says they want to do better, and it still doesn't get done?
Yeah, if you may have noticed from our bio, all three of us are in the reserves, and I'm in a cyber position now in the reserves, so it's near and dear to me. But I am thinking, in the current, where we sit now, like looking at the NDAA, are there certain aspects of this NDAA cycle that are related to cyber or tech that are worth the audience knowing? And I know, and if you haven't read the NDA, I don't expect you to go through every page, but maybe some of you do, but it is interesting to see how much cyber in certain cycles is really buried in there, and it's really important to know.
Yeah, I think, so you'll probably hear a little bit of hesitancy in my voice, only because we are entering that sort of embargoed season within Capitol Hill and the Armed Services Committee, in which we build what we call the MARC. So it's basically all of the PSMs coming together, building and off of many of the conversations that we have in venues like this, figuring out what the policy levers or legislation is required to put into the chairman's MARC. And then we go through an amendment process, which adds more to that, and then eventually we go into conference where the House and the Senate sort of figure out their differences, and then you have the actual bill. That is literally how a bill becomes a law. Thank you, Schoolhouse Rock. But we're in that time period. So most folks don't know this, but that whole session, most of it, a huge component of it, is actually closed on the Senate side. It's open on the House side. So on my side, I actually cannot talk about specifics, but I can say what you've probably seen already in a lot of the different hearings through the various posture hearings, et cetera. And honestly, it's not going to surprise anyone. based on the executive orders that we've seen. But a lot of it is understanding how and looking at how we really establish a strong deterrence in cyberspace. The activities that occurred, the adversary, the persistent threats and activities of People's Republic of China last year with Fulton Salt Typhoon, it's really getting to that question, and I think it's pushing it to the forefront. You're seeing it by bipartisan focus. So we're kind of maturing past, we just need to support critical infrastructure into, okay, well, how do we stop it before we even get to having to defend it? Like, let's move even further left of boom. So that's where I'm seeing a lot of, I guess, big thoughts, if you will. At least on my side of where a lot of members are interested.
I will, be respectful to honor the discretion that the members put in the staff. So I won't talk about the FY26. But what I will say is, if you look back at the last 15 years of NDAAs, certain topics are always going to get addressed, right? Military and cyber workforce issues will be in the bill. Why? Because they're in every bill, right? OT cybersecurity issues and weapon system cybersecurity issues will be in this bill. Why? Because they're in every bill. Force design issues are consistently in the bill. What's the other big one I'm thinking of? Oh, DIB cybersecurity, that'll probably be in the bill because it's in every year bill. Those are the consistent themes you're always going to see in there. I mean, the question is, why do they have to be legislated year on year and it still not be significantly better as a consequence?
I wasn't going to ask that question, so just for the record.
We should.
No, that's super helpful. I mean, it's interesting insight because many of us don't live on the Hill, so it's interesting to hear that. But on that vein, like if there are people sitting here saying this policy aspect, this legislation aspect really interests me, are there ways both civilians and military in the audience can better follow this or perhaps even engage while they're in the military? Like, is there an opportunity for military to be on the Hill? Any thoughts you have on that?
There's phenomenal programs like Hill Vets that helps put former service members into personal offices. There's the Legislative Fellows Program. There is working in Ledge Affairs or working in the programming shops in the services that often engage with the Hill. There's no shortage of things. I mean, I always defined that my job was to find problems and fix them. To find them means I need to actively search them out. I need to talk to people. I need to hear from the folks who aren't just in, the, backbench of the room nodding because the general or the admiral's reading the slides as they're supposed to that, that individual wrote. No insult to general officers here. But those are the people who, you go talk to after the thing and you say, hey, I'm Josh, right? Like, I want to go find the people who know the issue the best, and in filling out that understanding of what's the ground truth, there's the official version that's presented, and then that is one shade of gray, and you go and complete that picture by talking to more and more people. And it's not that different from being in the IC. You are finding information, you are acquiring it, you are building trust, and you are asking people to put their faith in you that by telling you something, you're not going to burn them or there are going to be professional repercussions for it. You want to, and that's why, coming to HammerCon is like a family reunion, right? I'm seeing all my friends because, if you're in this room, if you're at this event, it's because you love this field and we're all trying to make it better. So that's, how to engage. It's not treating Congress like it is this foreign beast that, don't talk ill of the family outside of the family. No, like everyone is trying to do their own things. I mean, one of the reasons why I was ready to kind of hang it up was I felt really good about the people who are in the roles, right, that are going to follow in and follow up with this. I left, before you started because I knew that people are in good hands. So
That's the excuse.
no, Congress.
Exactly. I hope my boss is listening. So
I wouldn't say Congress is your friend, right? But the staff are not the enemy. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I think it's hard to add any more to what Josh said. it is absolutely a team sport. I know that it can feel not that way. I was a legislative fellow and actually did Hillfet, so I feel like I'm checking off the boxes that Josh had mentioned. But I quite frankly, before becoming an Air Force legislative fellow, I thought, Congress, ooh, I don't know. I liked my intel, like super tech kind of world. Why would I want to get into something very policy kind of focused? But it is so much about the people that you know, and it is so much about problem solving. And because you have such passionate people that are sitting in these positions, there's a really deep desire to dive into what we can do to help. I think that is one of the unique things, and I think really special things about the cyber portfolio is we all want to do something incredibly powerful. And we all want to be able to help move things forward. We all have different roles to play in that. I am now a massively large Wrexham fan. Stupid Hulu got me, and I watch every single episode. And I love this idea of being on like a soccer team. And for me, I'm one of the players, and you all are one of the players. And the only way we are actually going to get the ball into the goal is if we work together. So what I will say is, don't be intimidated by us when we come around, and come talk to us in engagements like this, because we are only so good as we are able to engage with you all and listen and be curious and dive deep with you all. If you can't figure this out, I worked at Amazon, so I'm dropping a lot of different leadership principles here. But it's really true. We can't succeed without you all. So please don't be afraid and just come chat.
Perfect, thank you. I think we'll have time maybe for one, potentially two questions. So if you do have a question.
The panel after us said they were cool with it.
Exactly. I see Mark Montgomery sitting here, so he's volunteered 20 minutes of his panel. If you do have any questions, just try to keep it concise. And anything within scope is fair. And there's two mics here. Or yes, if I can recite it for the audience, ma'am. And the question was anything that they'd like to elaborate on around the dual hat of NSA and Cyber Command.
There was a phenomenal report that was done by General Dunford, completed in December of 2022. It looked holistically and dispassionately at this issue. It found conclusively in one direction. If there is a reason to revisit that analysis, speaking to being sort of born analyst, let's revisit that conversation. But to my knowledge, I have not seen anything to present a case that has disputed those findings. But if there's reason to question that, then let's have that conversation out in the public.
I would say this is an area that members feel very strongly about on both committees, on both chambers. You will hear many of the questions in the testimony. Senator Rounds asked it last week to Secretary Hegseth and Chairman Kane. So there's definitely strong feelings, and it is backed up, and it is influenced and informed by these studies that have been done previously. So yeah, plus one to what Josh mentioned.
I think we have time for a really quick question if anybody has another final one. We answered everything. All right, well, that's fine. Seeing none. Do you either one of you have anything to leave us on that we haven't gotten to today? No pressure if you don't, but.
I think we're on the cusp of something major. I really do believe that in this space, we have been at this for a number of years now. We're seeing where we're successful. We're seeing where we're not successful. I think it's coming to a head, and the community that really was born out of the intelligence community is now too far out in the open to, sort of play hide the ball with. And so we're going to be seeing, where and being held to account in the same way that other warfighting disciplines have been held to. And so I'm actually really excited about, this next chapter of the country's military cyber story.
I'd say also same to what Josh mentioned. I think from my perspective, we need to think very critically about what is next and how to get this right. And it is a team sport, not just between the legislative and executive branch, but it's a team sport across all of the many different federal agencies and organizations. And I think that from my perspective, that remains a challenge from a legislative side, but it is something that in the executive branch, quite frankly, is a little easier. So I am really excited about exploring what this looks like and what that next phase looks like in a full spectrum deterrence establishment sort of perspective.
Well, thank you both. This has been really terrific. If you don't mind joining me in just thanking them both for coming today.